Hello. Come here. So I haven't posted on YouTube in a year, and you might be wondering what's changed. Well, I'm a lesbian, so I'm gonna do my makeup and tell you how I came to this conclusion. Where do I start this? I think the first thing I would want to say about this whole process is that what really held me back from realizing my full potential is that I kept looking at my past and being like, for one, I dated a man for an entire year, and I kept using that fact as if it was some kind of evidence. And what I should have been doing was re-examining the past through a different lens. That relationship was problematic for a ton of reasons, and maybe hi kitty, maybe there's a reason besides it was all my fault and I was this and too sad. One thing I always found interesting is that I felt so trapped in that relationship, and there was a lot of reasons for that, but one of the biggest ones is that I felt I had so many gay friends, and I felt so much FOMO, and I felt so not included. And one thing I would always think and tell myself and tell other people is that I couldn't picture myself marrying a man, and the idea of that was just terrifying to me. As a kid, you think about your worst fears and the worst case scenario, or you think what are the worst ways to die. Well, I don't know if everyone did that, but as a kid I was always thinking that. And to me, my worst fear was always getting married to a man. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I could look at the fact that my mom had 5 husbands, not all at once, just bump 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 bump, and my dad had 4 wives, so and I saw how badly those went. But also I think it was just an overwhelming fear of domesticity, and I feel I was exposed to all of this heterosexual representation that terrified me. If I were to get married to a man, I would feel trapped, and I wouldn't be a person or get to be myself. And when I look back at that relationship, I wasn't myself, and that was why I was so depressed in it, and why it didn't work is because I was convinced I was somebody I wasn't. And when I was with him, I was the kind of person where I was if I'm with somebody, I'm going to be with them forever. So I had this idea of forever, and I'm gonna be with him forever, and we're gonna get married, and that means I'm gonna have to have kids, and we're gonna live together. And that just felt really awful to me. But we broke up, and it wasn't until a year and a half later that I realized I was a lesbian. So I guess the question now is, how did I get from that breakup point to a year and a half later? And the answer is a lot of sex with men. You would have thought maybe I was just being so gay, and that's how I realized. It's more process of elimination, and my therapist. I guess I'm hesitant to talk about it because I think a lot of people will be well, you're not a lesbian if you've done all of this shit with men and had a boyfriend. But I'm here to say that is definitely not true. I think a lot of women have sex for other reasons than enjoyment. Let me just give you some examples. The biggest reasons for me were attention, validation and self-harm. I never like had sex with them because I was attracted to them. Like that was never like a reason for me. It was more like, what could they like give me emotionally? But in the end, it ended up just being like what they took from me. Like validation, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Like, to go into that a little more, like I've always had like issues with like my body and how I look. And you know, if someone wants to like fucking be in your body, like that's validation that like you look a certain way or you look good. I'm a kind of the person that attracts a lot of drama, and that could eventually tie into the self-harm part of it. But like I always felt like, oh, my life is like boring or like not happening if it's not dramatic. And one way to make it dramatic was like sleeping with like shitty men who would like turn out to like, I don't know, do these things or say these things. And it's like, oh, then I'd have like a story to tell. And then I was like hurting myself in the process. I'm not gonna get into all of that, into like the reasons why people, you know, seek out risky, impulsive, self-harming behaviors. Is it too easy to say like, oh, that's self-explanatory if you're like mentally ill? Because that's what I'm gonna say. So, foundation is done, by the way. I kind of just got to this point emotionally where I was just like so tired of myself, and it's like I didn't even like these guys, and I was just letting them hurt me. While this was all happening, I was also kind of falling in love with my friend who is a girl. So, you know, it was kind of like this perfect storm of, wow, I'm just like sleeping with all these guys and feeling so shitty about myself and thinking that I'm getting something from it, but all I'm doing is like making myself weaker for somebody else to take advantage of me. And at the same time, I'm like having all these gay feelings for my straight friend, and it feels kinda shitty. I am a very big proponent of journaling, and if I looked at like my past journal entries when I was talking about her versus when I was talking about like these guys, it was just way different. You know, with her I was like romanticizing her and like all the things I liked about her, all the things I wanted to do with her in the future, whereas these guys, it was just like, ugh, they're making me feel bad, they're making me feel less than human. Onto the blush. So I guess when that friendship ended, it was only a few weeks later that I finally came out, because like, the pain from that, in these deep, painful moments that like you realize important things about yourself, about your identity. Looking back in hindsight, I look at all of these signs and I'm like, it was so obvious. I was legit telling my friends, word for word, things like, the point of having sex with men isn't to enjoy it. I was saying that, and I genuinely still like didn't put the pieces together. But I think one of the biggest reasons for that is I had like misconceptions about like what lesbianism, who lesbians are, and I couldn't like see myself like filling that role. Maybe what I liked about men is that like they didn't really expect anything emotionally from me, whereas I felt like women like saw me for who I really was, and that was like scary and way more vulnerable. To me, it felt like calling myself a lesbian was such like a permanent identity decision. Being a lesbian, to me, at the time at least, meant like, okay, so no more romantic or sexual things with men. And to me that felt at the time like limiting and scary, and if I wasn't 100% sure, I didn't want to commit to that. With like my patterns of behavior with men, like I feel like I got like addicted to it. And I felt like if you think really negatively about yourself, and there are all these people that are willing to like feed into how you feel about yourself, whether they know it or not, like it gets kind of addicting. Now I kind of want to talk about the weeks leading up to my big realization. I was simultaneously examining my past hookups with men, and then like when I was doing it, like in what was the present, I was like consciously thinking about these encounters while they were happening and being like, does this bring me joy? Why does this feel low-key kind of awful? Why can I only do this when I'm drunk? If you can only like have sex with a gender while you're under the influence, maybe you should examine that a bit more. I think there was this one guy in particular. I feel bad to say like, oh, he made me realize, and it like wasn't anything against him. It was the fact that he was like actually nice, actually giving me everything that I wanted, and I still just like felt nothing. Once it started to feel more like a relationship, I started to feel those same like trapped, terrified feelings. Because to me, like my relationship to men has always been very like transactional. So I started to get scared when he was like doing all these things, because I was like, ugh, that means that like I have to have sex with him if he's like being nice to me or like giving me things, which is just not true. But I think it's a way that women think and a way that lesbians think. So now, as I'm finishing up, I want to talk about how it's felt in the month since I've came out. I didn't realize how good it would feel. The day I came out, I just felt like fucking great. I was so happy because it felt like I was afraid that when I came out that I was gonna feel how I did when I came out as bisexual, and I would feel like this, like something deep down is wrong. I feel like I'm pretending. But I just never felt more like myself. It was like a double whammy, because I was like, okay, I did this and I made this decision and I told everybody and I actually feel good about it, and now I'm so relieved that I feel good about it, and I know that I waited until I was ready and I didn't make a mistake. My worst kind of fear about coming out was that I would lose all of that drama and I would be lonely, and I was afraid to just like, you know, be kind of on my own. And I was at first. I was like extremely lonely, but I was also smart, and I just surrounded myself. I contacted like every lesbian I knew, and I was like, can we hang out? And I wouldn't say that I have a partner now, but I have a thing that is budding, and I feel excited for it, not just because I'm like, oh, this person is so cool, but also because I feel like I'm learning so much about myself, and I'm finally in some kind of relationship that I actually want to be in and want to be a part of. I wrote this the day after I came out, and it was like, I felt like there was this icky black goo, you know, like the stuff that comes out of Billie Eilish's eyes in the When the Party's Over music video. I felt like all of that was sitting at the pit of my stomach, and I didn't realize it was there until I came out and I vomited all of it up. And then I only noticed its absence, and I felt so much cleaner and so much like healthier and ready for the world. And then I also felt like I am never changing. I'm never changing this part of me, and I'm never taking it back, because why the fuck would I eat my puke? It's kind of a gross metaphor, but it feels gross to pretend to be somebody you're not in such an intimate, physical, and emotional way. Yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna put on an outfit and complete this look. Now and again, shirt, skirt, longer socks. So, yeah. I hope that you learned something, not only about me, but about yourself. Bye.